All right, welcome everyone. I'm excited to have you join us today for a discussion around Recruiting 101 and how students can really understand what a recruiter is and how they can stand out in the candidate pool. I'm joined today by three fabulous alumni, Nicole Morris, Elena Andrioni, and Ryan Graff, who are in recruiting roles and are going to share a little bit about their experience. So to kick us off, why don't we just kind of go around and have each of you briefly introduce yourself, maybe share your class year, your major, the current role you're in, and the company you work for. So Elena, do you want to start?
Sure. So my name is Elena Andrioni. I was graduated the class of 2011, and I was a Spanish major with a Latin American and Latino studies concentration. I currently work as a recruiter for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, Massachusetts.
Perfect. Thank you. Nicole?
So my name is Nicole Morris, and I was a 2015 Holy Cross grad. I double majored in English and art history. I'm the talent acquisition manager over at Mintz, which is an AmLaw 100 law firm.
Thank you. And Ryan?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Graff. I was class of 2006, also an English major like you, Nicole. And I currently work as the Senior Talent Acquisition Director at Vynamic, which is a healthcare management consulting firm.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's great to have representation from different industries. I'm sure you'll have some great different perspectives to share. So to start, why don't we kind of start with the basics? So Elena, I would love for you to just share a little bit about like, what is a recruiter? Like, how would you kind of define that role?
Yeah, so when I think of a recruiter, I think of us as being the connection between the company and the candidates. So there's really two different types of recruiters that come to mind. There's recruiters that are built in-house, so someone like me who is employed by the company and I recruit for my company. And then there are recruiters that work for maybe a staffing agency or a sourcing agency, and they are working for an agency to place candidates into different positions. They work with different companies in a contract basis. So that's kind of the two ways that I think of recruiters. And really, we're just there to support not only our clients or our companies by filling the positions, but also to help the candidates find the right position that works for them.
Perfect. Thank you. And so Nicole, as you think about kind of the role that you play as a recruiter, how are you kind of finding sourcing candidates? Like, what does that process look like for you?
Definitely. So we have a lot of different channels that help us source applicants. So we do use search firms and agencies on occasion. Typically for entry-level hires, we do directly source them. Our manner of doing that is through job boards. So everyone make sure that you're monitoring Handshake, which is great for seniors that are going to be recent college grads. And we also post everything on LinkedIn and our main career sites as well. So I think it's always helpful if you end up deciding on 5 to 10 companies that you really want to look for to monitor their actual career sites, since typically companies will always post every opening they have on their actual website.
Perfect. Thank you. And so as we think about like how a student can then kind of stand out, right, in a candidate pool and really kind of put themselves out there as a prime candidate. Ryan, let's start with you. How can and should students really kind of differentiate themselves from other applicants? Like, what are you looking for as you're exploring candidates?
Yeah, I think there are probably three things that I would recommend for folks to think about as they're communicating and sharing their interest in a role. The first is a pretty clear one. Be genuine. Bring your true self to the search. Show who you are. Share your passion areas, your strengths, but do it in a way that is, really genuine to who you are and what you want and what you're looking for in your future role. The next piece of advice that I would share here is highlight your strengths, but do so in a way that is humble. This is a chance for you to brag about your accomplishments, but you want to do so in a way that shows that humility and recognizes, that you probably have some things to learn. But again, it is your chance to highlight your skills, your experience, and your strengths in a way that is sometimes a little bit tricky to do, but finding that balance of humility while showing those strengths is important. The third thing I think that is something to be thinking about constantly is being sure to share strong or communicate with strong communication skills, both in writing, in verbal communication, in any way that you're interacting with a potential employer. Be sure to be really thoughtful. When writing emails, they should be, direct and clear and concise. When speaking, you should be able to really clearly articulate your story in a way that is clear and specific. So I think those three things are good ways to really differentiate yourself and show who you are as you go through the interview process.
Perfect. Thank you. And kind of tied into that, as we think about kind of those verbal communication skills, one of the critical pieces, right, in any kind of job or internship search is like that ability to kind of talk about yourself and talk about your experiences. So I would love to hear from any of you around kind of what advice do you have for students around how they do that effectively? How do they talk about their experiences and skills to kind of support their ability or interest in a role?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak on that a little. I really recommend, at least for the candidates that I deal with, to read the job description and pull different pieces out that you feel like you can relate your experiences to. So, for example, if it says for the positions that I recruit for, customer service or working with patients is really important. So, if you have experience in customer service, pulling that piece out as a requirement from the job description and then using your direct experience to kind of key back into how you are good at that and being able to connect those different requirements from the role and relate them back to the experience in your resume.
Yeah, and no job is too small when it comes to bringing those skills up. When I was a recent grad, I think I was most asked about my barista role that was on my resume. And truly, it was a great way to sell customer service skills, being adaptable, multitasking. So you can always plug that in for your jobs that you might think might have been a summer job, but you really can make it shine.
Yeah, and the one piece I would add is go into these conversations prepared. Before an interview, make sure that you're jotting down some notes that tie back to the job description, that highlight that barista job that you're proud of. Have a sense of how you're going to talk about these before going in. You don't want to sound too rehearsed, but also being at least practicing or having some notes that you can refer to will help you to remember those specific moments or those skills that you learned, so that you're not kind of going in completely blind.
Perfect. That's great advice. So as you think about kind of that preparation piece, let's talk a little bit about application materials and students kind of preparing and presenting themselves on paper. So what are you looking for in a resume? I would like to start with the resumes first, and then maybe we'll tackle kind of covering the letters as a second. So any resume tips or things you're kind of particularly honing in on?
I would say that a lot of recruiters do see a high volume of resumes. So you sort of have an order, a checklist that you look through a resume. For me, it's formatting and just typos. You almost skim first to see if there's any small errors. So just make sure that you're always reviewing your resume multiple times and then asking family, friends, the Career Services Center to do a second comb through, since those small errors can sometimes be a quick way to say no to somebody. And then cover letters are super important as well, especially for entry-level positions. I would say that's your place so you really can shine, explain why you're interested in a company, sell some of your skill set. So make sure that you're not skipping that step if they are asking for a cover letter.
Something I look for on resumes too is usually a link to your LinkedIn account, and I check that out right away. So making sure that you have that on there as well. And I also am mindful of resumes that are not overly long. So I want you to give us a lot of, some quick bullet points about what you did in your jobs, but you're also graduating from college. And so you shouldn't have a resume that's 3 pages long. So feel free to, list out those jobs like that barista position, because that you can learn a lot from those positions. And we want to see that, but make sure that it's not, overly long resume.
Yeah, and I think it is important to have as much as it adds a little bit more work to the job seeker, to have a specific resume for each role that you're applying for. One kind of behind the scenes tip that a lot of recruiters use, or a lot of systems that we use help us to do, is there's AI technology that helps to kind of tie a resume to a job description, and helps to kind of elevate a specific resume that has the right, kind of background. So if and when you do have the right experience based off of the job description, bring that into your resume, because it's going to help your resume kind of float to the top, and get to the recruiter in a little bit of a quicker way.
Perfect. So as we think about kind of the process of exploring jobs and internships, interviews obviously is kind of that next step. So what tips or advice would you all have around the best way to prepare for interviews?
I think
rereading. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
After you.
I think just like Ryan had mentioned earlier, just reading the job description and really understanding what they're looking for and reviewing your resume so that you can tie back, because they might ask you specific questions about your resume. So you want to make sure you remember what you put on there. And I think the most important thing is it's just a conversation. So kind of take a second, catch your breath, and remember that you are also having this opportunity to interview that company as well. So come prepared with questions about things that you want to know more about from that person or that interview.
Mhm. Yeah, I was gonna say, be confident. These are again conversations for you to talk about the skills that you've acquired, the experiences that you've had, and being excited about what you've done in the past will help to show that genuine interest, and also to show that passion that you're likely coming to that job search with. So, the confidence I think is really helpful. And sometimes, maybe it is a little bit of a nervous nervous, kind of environment to be in. Feel completely comfortable taking a moment, pausing, and saying, "Hey, can I take a second to think about that question?" I've had interviews where candidates have taken, a couple of moments to digest the question, but have said to me, when the question was asked, let me think about this a little bit, and then came back with a really great answer. Feel completely comfortable taking those seconds to process, and then bring your question or your answer back to the recruiter.
So I'd love to transition to, how the best way for students to kind of work with recruiters, because I think sometimes that's a bit of the unknown from students is like, what's the best way for me to kind of connect and respond. So like at the kind of as a starting point, what should students do if a recruiter reaches out to them? Like, what's the best way for them to kind of, do they always need to respond? Should they respond? How should they respond? Like, what experience and tips do you guys have there?
I think first and foremost, look at what type of recruiter it is. So is it a recruiter like me who's recruiting for a specific company, or is it a recruiter reaching out from a staffing agency? I know that when I was graduating, I got a lot of people that reached out from staffing agencies, and I didn't really understand the difference of, oh, they're interviewing me then to potentially place me in interviews for another company. So kind of understanding the two different sides of that. I think that you should always respond if you are interested in the company, and even if you're not. I think that you should also respond and say, something to this effect of, thank you so much for reaching out. At this time, I'm, interested in XYZ. But I definitely think that you should respond.
Good. Anything to add to that, Nicole or Ryan, or does that kind of in line with your perspective?
I agree. Yeah, I think it's always polite, even if you might not have interest. It's totally okay to say thanks for reaching out. I'm not interested at this time, but I'll reach back out if anything should change in the future.
Perfect. Okay, good. So then as we think about like networking etiquette, I would love to talk a little bit about kind of on the opposite side as students are reaching out to recruiters. So like, for example, if a student's reaching out because there's a recruiter at a company that they're interested in, like, what do they do if they don't hear back from the recruiter? Like, how many times can they follow up without being annoying? And so I would just love to hear your perspective on kind of etiquette there and what advice you'd have for students around kind of navigating that process.
Yeah, I think it depends in certain circumstances. I always say if you see a job that you would like to apply for, apply directly online first and then follow up by reaching out to the recruiter. Sometimes things move really quickly. So if you pause to try to get a hold of the recruiter first, you might miss out on a timing opportunity. And it also shows to recruiters that you took the initiative, that you clearly are engaged with the position and would like to pursue it. I typically would say one follow-up to a recruiter is good. We do juggle a lot of different openings, as well as sometimes we want to move forward quickly, but hiring teams are a little bit slow to get back to us. So I always want to get back to candidates really quickly. Sometimes if there is a delay, it's simply because I don't have a response or an answer at that time. But I think one outreach is definitely okay as a follow-up.
And I always say too, don't be afraid to reach out on LinkedIn, but keep in mind, like Nicole said, we have a lot of people that reach out to us, especially when they see our title and maybe the company we work for, and they're like, this is the person who's, the one, and they don't realize we're juggling, sometimes upwards of 100 positions. So you just want to be mindful that if they don't get back to you, it's not necessarily you, it just might be a bandwidth.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add is that use your network beyond just the folks that that you know are in recruiting. Oftentimes you'll be able to gather and gain a lot more insight on the specific role or the opportunity if you're talking to somebody that's in the role. So if it's not an outreach to the recruiter, try your broader network to learn a little bit more as well.
Perfect. Thank you. This is all fantastic advice. So to kind of close, I'd love to close on that note. So I'd love to hear from each of you around like what final kind of words of wisdom or advice would you have for students as they're navigating this process?
I think making as many connections with fellow HC alum is just crucial. I get people who reach out to me all the time, and when I see an application with their education says Holy Cross, I instantly light up because I'm like, this person knows how to work hard and I'm going to connect with them. So don't feel bad reaching out to us. I've never met an alumni that is not happy to at least be a connection or send a fellow alumni a word.
Yeah, my piece of advice would be to treat the interview process as a two-way interview. And as you're learning, or as the company's learning about you, you should look to be learning about the company and the role. And your recruiter can be a huge resource for you in this space, but also your other interviewers will help to give you that information. Know that you are looking for the company's looking for somebody that's going to fit in their role, but you're going to want to look to find a role that's going to be the best fit for you. So bring questions to these conversations that are really thoughtful and will give you a chance to understand, what is this going to look like for you? What is this going to be, for me, for the short, medium, and long term? And how will this come into play with my career goals? And again, use your recruiter as you're working through this to understand who maybe the best people are to ask these questions. But I think it's really important to recognize that this needs to be a conversation and not just a question and answer from the interviewers.
Mm-hmm. And I would say be proactive and responsive. So definitely have your resume at the ready. Make sure you have a cover letter template that you can easily plug into so that once you find something you want to apply for, you can do so very quickly. And as well, when recruiters reach out to schedule an interview, respond efficiently and quickly so that you can be moved forward in the process faster than everybody else. So sometimes that does make a difference. And then I'd also say, as we've mentioned, don't be too nervous. Always remember that when we're asking you questions, it's questions that are about yourself as well as about your own experience. So truly, you're the only person that knows the answer. So you already have that at your side.
Perfect. Thank you. This was fantastic. I appreciate the three of you taking the time to share some knowledge, expertise, some advice. I think this is just going to be fabulous information that the Center for Career Development can continue to kind of drive and equip our students to really navigate this process really effectively. So thank you all. I appreciate it.